Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's Dynamics 365 Tech Talk. Today's topic is What's New in SCM Wave 2 2021 Edition. My name is Brad, and I'll be your moderator today. We are broadcasting this session through Teams live events, and the audio can be heard through your device speakers. This session is being recorded on behalf of the Microsoft Corporation. When you join this event, your name, email address, and/or phone number may be viewable by other session participants in the attendee list. By joining, you're agreeing to this experience. The recording will be available on the Tech Talks Community Dynamics page within 5 business days. If you have questions for the presenters or need support, please use the Q&A panel located on the right side of your screen. Our presenters will be responding to your questions throughout the presentation. Thank you for your patience during these announcements. Presenting for us today from Microsoft, we have Nicole Gump, Senior Program Manager, and Zach Greenvoss, Principal R&D Solution Architect. Nicole, over to you.
Thanks, Brad, and welcome everyone to our latest edition in our What's New in Dynamics 365 for Supply Chain Management series. The talk today is going to cover the Wave 2 2021 timeframe, which covers October 2021 through March of 2022. So let's review our agenda. We are going to go through an overview by each main topic area within the supply chain management space. And then we're going to do more of a deep dive on some of the new features that are generally available in the inventory and logistics area. And then we will have time for some Q&A at the end of the presentation. So let's get started. Let's start with our overview. So we're going to start with our distributed hybrid topology area. This is formally referred to as cloud and edge or cloud scale units. And so going forward, I believe you will hear it referred to as distributed hybrid topology. So what I have listed here, you'll see that as of kind of today's date here at the end of October, that these features are still in preview. But what we have got coming in this space are support for the edge scale units to run the workloads for this architecture. I believe we did actually mention this in our Wave 1 presentation, but this is the support for the on-prem devices. Those are the edge scale units. And then we've also got some enhancements coming in both our manufacturing and our execution workloads for the scale units. So we refer to those as MES and WES. So in the manufacturing space, there are some enhancements around being able to register material consumption for production and batch orders, as well as being able to start production and batch orders from the workload on the edge or scale unit. And then on the warehouse side, we have some enhanced support for being able to complete the full wave process on the scale unit, as well as being able to do some exception handling of work such as short picks. You can also now do mixed license plate receiving on the scale unit, and then also send outbound ship confirmations, including 856s or ASNs. So that is what's coming in our distributed hybrid topology space. For inventory and logistics, as I mentioned, we are going to do a deeper dive here in the coming slides on some of the features that are generally available now. So this is as of the 10.0.21 release. But I wanted to point out one preview feature here, as well as kind of a new functionality that you're going to see, starting with this release plan and going forward. The product team has now released these feature states starting in this version 10.0.21. And in each of these areas, some features are now turned on and mandatory, meaning they can't be turned off, or they are simply on by default when you upgrade to this release. So if you're familiar, you've been working with Dynamics supply chain management for a while, you know that this is kind of our design pattern, that our new features are kind of behind that enablement in the feature management workspace. So these feature states now, you'll see in the release notes, are going to tell you, starting with this version, which ones are either now mandatory or on by default. So I've got a couple of examples here. There are also some hyperlinks because there's a much lengthier list in a lot of these areas. But an example for inventory and logistics is that we now have mandatory features of the organization-wide work blocking feature, as well as the task-based wave demand replenishment. And then some of the features that are on by default, but could be turned off, are the transfer order cancellation feature, as well as the work line details form. So I will be going over similar concepts in the other areas as well. But just so you're aware that that is something we've kind of introduced with this wave, and that you should see going forward with the feature states. So one of the preview features that we have in inventory and logistics that's pretty exciting from a warehouse management, advanced warehouse management perspective, is that we're introducing this feature called pause tasks. You may also hear it referred to as app detours in the warehouse management mobile app. So this is our ability to interrupt a workflow, start a secondary workflow, and then return to the previous workflow, without losing that assignment of the user or the place that you were within the workflow, right? So an example might be that I've got a worker who is completing a sales order pick. They arrive at the pick location. They need to perform maybe an item inquiry for what's in that location. So they pause their sales picking task. They complete their item inquiry, and then they're able to return directly to their sales picking task to complete it. I know this is a feature that a lot of our community, our customers and partners have asked for a long time. So we're really excited that this is in preview and that this is going to land shortly. So we may be doing a future tech talk specific to some of the new warehouse management, just mobile application features, so that we can do some more demos and some kind of in-depth discussion. So be on the lookout for that if it's an area that you're interested in. In the manufacturing space, again, as I said, we've got these new feature states that have been introduced. So in manufacturing, some of the features that are on by default now, starting with this release, are the auto-generate the license plate number for report as finished from the job card device, as well as printing labels from the job card device. The preview feature that we have for manufacturing is some enhancements to the production floor execution interface for process manufacturing. So this includes being able to report progress on batch orders, including co-products and byproducts, as well as being able to register material consumption, including your batch and serial numbers. So moving to our planning area, again, feature states, we've got some things that are on by default now. Those include the parallel firming of planned orders, as well as the auto firming of planned orders that come out of your planning optimization runs, if you're using the planning optimization microservice for master planning. There is a new planned orders form that I wanted to point out here. It's still in preview as of 10.0.21. But if you work a lot with the planned orders form, you may know that it can be slow at times. The form takes a while to load. So it's been redesigned for performance. So to alleviate some of those problems loading in the original planned orders form that we had. So go ahead and, if this is a a form that you work with a lot, test it once you upgrade to 10.0.21, and you should see a performance improvement there. And then we've got a couple of other preview features in our planning area around planning optimization. So what's coming is support for production scheduling with the flexible resource allocation based on resource capabilities, as well as support for safety margins of type reorder margin and issue margin during master planning. And then finally, this kind of our last area of our overview is the production information management area. The feature states that we have on by default here include being able to access the BOM version from the BOM lines, as well as the hazmat product shipping documentation. So if you work with hazardous materials, this feature for the shipping documentation will now be on by default. Another kind of exciting and often requested feature that we hear in this space that is coming and is in preview is the cross-company data sharing for released products. So this is set to GA this December. So this is the cross-company data sharing that lets you share released product data amongst some or all of your legal entities. So this enables you to manage just the one product record and then release it and share it with any specified legal entities that you need to. Okay, so that is our overview. Let's jump into our deeper dive here in the inventory and logistics features that are generally available. So these are not preview features. So here is the overview of each of the features we're going to go through. It starts with the reason codes for adjustments from the warehouse mobile application, as well as GS1 barcode support in the app. Another app feature is the custom step titles and instructions. We then have some performance features. This one is around the manual packing and closing and reopening containers within warehouse management. Then if you're using the warehouse slotting feature, there's a new enhancement for being able to slot mixed units of an item. Another feature, this one is in support of our distributed hybrid topology framework, and that is decoupling our put away work from our ASNs to enable us to send those ASNs from the warehouse execution workload. We then have a couple of features around our new landed cost module. So one of them is the goods in transit receiving and put away feature for the mobile application, as well as some updates to some setups, including work header breaks on the work template and a new periodic task for tracking updates. We then have some enhancements in the rebate management module as well, around the deduction workbench and being able to utilize catch weight items. And then we're going to end with the new soft reservation feature for the inventory visibility add-in. So that's a microservice that you can add in to your Dynamics 365 environment. All right, so let's get into the details here. We're starting with the reason codes for adjustments. So this has got a lengthy feature name. It's called Post on-hand adjustments using configurable reason codes connected to offset accounts. So that's a long-winded way to say that when we enable this feature, we're giving our warehouse or retail store workers the ability to specify a reason code for any adjustments that they're performing on the mobile application. So you'll see I've got a screenshot on the right-hand side of performing an adjustment out of inventory. And I now, with this feature enabled, have this additional field called counting reason code that I'm able to specify. Based on your mobile device menu item setup, there are some configurations around defaulting this value or potentially even just hiding it from the mobile application user if you want to create a default that they are not able to change. So each of these predefined reason codes is, as the feature name says, tied to an offset account. So when that adjustment is posted, it's posted to that assigned account instead of to that default inventory posting profile, which was the previous behavior of the adjustment actions from the Warehouse mobile app. So if you're familiar with the cycle count reason code feature that we introduced a couple of years ago now, this is kind of an extension of that same functionality, where you do have at both the warehouse and individual product level a counting policy that can be applied that says when you are performing, counts and adjustments of this item, is the reason code mandatory for being able to post the adjustment, or is it optional? So there is some additional documentation on this if you're interested in looking at this feature and testing it for yourself. The GS1 barcode support for the Warehouse mobile application, this is actually a feature that technically was not just released in Wave 2, but this kind of came out in the summer timeframe, so late Wave 1, and we did not cover it in our previous Tech Talk, and this is kind of a major feature for our mobile application area, so I wanted to be sure to cover it. So the feature name here is just Scan GS1 Barcodes. And when you enable it, you can do exactly that. You can scan a GS1 barcode with your Warehouse mobile application. And what it does is extract the multiple data elements from the GS1 code, and it parses them into the individual fields in the Warehouse mobile app. So that is a performance improvement because it's eliminating the need for the user to scan potentially, multiple barcodes for like item number, vendor batch, or whatever else might be encoded in the barcode there. So that GS1 format is actually a global standard for exchanging data. So the standard defines the format and the kinds of data that can be encoded in the barcode. So they not only encode data, but they let you use the predefined list of application identifiers to define the meaning of the data. So you'll see the screenshot on the right-hand side that I have is highlighting some of the warehouse management module level parameters that need to be set if you're using this GS1 barcode scanning feature for the Warehouse mobile application. And it has to do with that identifying that data and the application identifiers. So again, there's some extensive documentation on this that's been posted on our doc site if you're interested in testing this feature. All right, another Warehouse mobile application feature. So this one is called the custom step titles and instructions for the Warehouse mobile app. And the feature name, if you're looking in feature management, is Warehouse app step instructions. And when you enable it, it's going to allow your warehouse manager, or really whoever's configuring the mobile device menu items and menus to create custom display instructions for essentially every step of the workflow. And what it is aimed at is, shortening the training time for a new or potentially a temporary worker in your warehouse, right? We're kind of at the end, Q4 of the calendar year here. So if you're a retail business, you might be bringing on some temporary staff to work in your warehouse as we kind of move through the holiday season and, volume picks up. So this feature is aimed at really being able to hand that new temporary worker a mobile device and kind of sending them out into the warehouse to complete whatever task they're doing. And they should essentially be able to click through the workflow, have the instructions, have the detail without any amount of extensive really training beforehand. So that's what this feature is aimed at. So what happens is that with this feature enabled on the Warehouse mobile application, you're now going to get this like automatic pop-up that gives you the step instructions from the bottom of the screen. And I'm actually going to demo this. But the worker can dismiss that by kind of just tapping anywhere outside of the pop-up. And once they've learned the process, they can say, don't show me, this instruction again, because otherwise it will continue to pop up every time that you access that particular workflow. So as I mentioned, we are going to do a demo actually of this feature. So I am going to bring up my environment. Let's refresh it. And I'm going to show you first where and how you can configure this in Dynamics. And then I'll show you on the mobile application what that looks like. So we're going to go to warehouse management. I've already got the feature enabled. So when I go to setup and I go to mobile device, I now have a new form called mobile device steps. So if I click into this form, the first time you access it, there's not going to be anything in this view. You have to click the create default setup button, and that will give you all of the information here. So these are our, all of our step IDs and titles that are used throughout, all of the various workflows for, counting, picking, replenishment, inquiries, whatever it might be on our mobile app. And you'll see here, so these are essentially our generic step IDs, and they are not related to any particular menu item, such as just a transfer order pick. So if I've got this batch disposition, anywhere that shows up in any workflow, I'm going to see this title when it's asking me to input the batch disposition code. If I want to create a custom title or instruction for a particular menu item name and not have it be a universal change, instead of changing this one here, I can actually go up to add step configuration and go to the menu item dropdown and pick the one that I just want it to apply to, and then go ahead and fill out the detail because it will add a new record down here in the form. I want to show you something that's a little bit more universal just for the ease of our demo here. So I'm going to find the license plate ID field. This is one that's used in a lot of different workflows in our warehouse mobile app. So this is our generic one. Again, it's not tied to any particular menu item. I can see that the generic title is scan a license plate. If I'm doing a confirmation instead of an input, the title becomes confirm license plate. If I want to change this, I need to click on the step ID. You'll see it's going to give me translations for every language. So I'm going to go ahead and just look for the English US so that I can change my English translation. In order to do that, I cannot edit directly in the grid here. I need to go into this view English translations of the step, and that will give me the ability to edit. Again, you see it's not tied to any particular menu name, but I now can edit the title. And so maybe for my business, instead of saying scan a license plate, because my warehouse isn't familiar with that license plate term, I want to say just scan a pallet. And I could change the same thing if if I'm being asked in any workflow to confirm a license plate, I can say confirm pallet ID. I could also, at this point, change the instruction. So this is the longer description that pops up at the bottom. So instead of it saying, a license plate as a unique ID, it's trying to give the user more information about what they are being asked to scan. Maybe I change that to a pallet, right? And same thing for this confirmation step. I can change the verbiage for this as well. And maybe I'm not changing a single word. I could delete all of this, right, and put in a completely different instruction that's more unique to my business. I'm just going to change that kind of generically so that we can see the change. I'm going to say OK. You can see as soon as I come back out to this form, it has already changed in this view. So now we have scan a pallet or confirm pallet ID. So I'm going to bring up my mobile application. I'm going to sign in. I'm going to go to just my inventory menu to do a simple license plate inquiry, because I know this one is going to prompt me to enter a license plate ID. So here's the feature kind of in action. You can see at the top, it has changed the title for the input to scan a pallet instead of scan a license plate ID. And then it has taken this instruction for the input and displayed my change as well. A pallet is a unique ID that can be assigned to a container. Obviously, I didn't change the verbiage down here, but we could have said scan a pallet to identify the container. As I mentioned, you can just click anywhere out of here to dismiss it. If I don't need to be shown this again, I can also say, don't show me this again. I'm just going to dismiss it for now, and I'm going to enter a pallet ID. And it's going to give me my pallet inquiry for this warehouse that I'm working in. So that's the feature in action. And as you can see, when I went back, it popped up that instruction again because I did not say, don't show me again. I can continue to dismiss it. That may become a little aggravating as your workers get more comfortable with the workflows, but for training, that's really what this feature is meant for. Okay, so that is our demo of the Warehouse app step instructions. So let's move on to some of our other features that we have. This one is called Faster API for container packing. I will concede that the way that this feature was named is a little misleading. So the full feature name is Use Faster API for Container Closing Reopening on Packing Station. So the word, API or Use Faster API might lead you to believe that this has to do with an integration or maybe our small parcel shipping feature, but it does not. This is actually just a performance improvement within the manual packing form in warehouse management, so that we can more easily process the closing and the reopening of any containers that are being created through this process. Okay, so when you enable the feature, you're really not going to see much of a change other than, the speed of these processes in the system. But what it's doing is taking all the container related inventory transactions that are created through this process and just, enhancing the performance of those. So as I said, performance enhancement for closing and reopening containers during manual packing. So even though this mentions the use of an API, it does not have anything to do with integration here. All right, then we have a feature that is related to our warehouse slotting. And this feature name is called Slot Mixed Units. So if you're already using the warehouse slotting feature, which essentially allows you to look at your demand, slot the items that are going to be, picked for that day or that shift, whatever you have available to slot. This new feature kind of enhances that slotting template that we have and allows you to define whether or not you want to slot mixed units in a slotting location. So when you enable this, and if you turn this parameter on, what you can do is say that item that's specified on the slotting template detail line can be slotted into a mixed unit location. If it's disabled, then that infers that we're only allowed to use a single unit for slotting that location. So the note here is that even though we're slotting mixed units, the item must be the same. So the item that's identified on the slotting template detail. So we can slot something like pieces and maybe full cases, or maybe, we have larger product and maybe we're actually slotting, individual cases and full pallets of product that are going to be picked, or maybe we're staging for production. So this is what the slotting template slot mixed units is for. And then we've got another feature here that is not really one that you're going to see in the UI, but it is important to note if you are using the distributed hybrid topology architecture. So this feature is called the decouple put away work from ASNs. I've included a screenshot of our ASN or packing structure that you do see in the UI. But what happens is when you have this feature enabled, it allows you to send those 856s, those outbound ASNs that we mentioned in the overview slide earlier from your warehouse management execution workload on the scale unit. So in order to enable that feature, the sending of the ASNs, we had to put this feature in place to decouple the put away work because the put away work and this packing structure for the ASNs used to live in the same database table. So they've been decoupled so that put away work is in its own table. And now we have the ASN information separate to enable that other feature of sending that ASN information from the workload. So as I mentioned, kind of the prerequisite or the assumption here is that you're using the distributed hybrid topology framework. So you would have the cloud scale unit add-in that you've acquired through LCS for your Dynamics 365 SCM instance. You've got your hub and your scale unit environments deployed, and you've got your warehouse management workload set up in one of those environments. Okay, and then from there, you can enable this feature, decouple put away work from ASNs, if you want to use the other new feature for our WES workload, which is being able to send those outbound 856s. Okay, so kind of in the background, but important if you are using this architecture. Okay, we're going to move into a couple of features on the landed cost module. So the first one is the goods in transit receiving and put away. That is actually the feature name. So when you enable it, you basically get new options in the work creation process dropdown on your mobile device menu item setup page. And so those include two new things, and that's the goods in transit item receiving, which is just a registration of the goods in transit order, or you have the goods in transit item receiving and put away option for that kind of single step workflow. Under this and put away option, you have this other parameter that I've highlighted in the screenshot. It's cut off a little bit here to the far right, but the name is enable shipping container complete. And if you enable that on your goods in transit item receiving and put away menu option, the user will be prompted to confirm whether the container is complete when they're working with this menu item on the mobile app. And if they say, yes, I physically received everything from this container, then the goods in transit order, anything else that was on the order that has not been received by that worker will be closed as a short receipt. And there is a note here that's very important. So if you're working with landed cost and you're working with warehouse management, which would be the case for this feature to be utilized, if you enable this feature, the goods in transit receiving and put away, you are not going to immediately see it in the work creation process dropdown until or unless you have also enabled the feature in the landed cost module parameters under feature visibility and show landed cost features. So that landed cost parameter is being able to tell kind of the rest of the system, especially our warehouse and transportation management modules, that I want to see the landed cost related features show up in my forms and fields in these other modules. Otherwise, if that feature is disabled in landed cost, so if you're not working with the module, then you can continue to work with the warehouse and transportation management without seeing all of these additional landed cost related features. But so you do want to go ahead, enable the feature, and make sure that you are showing the landed cost features as well in order to actually see it in your menu dropdown. Okay, one more for landed cost. This one is actually not behind a feature. So if you've got the landed cost module enabled and you're working with it, starting with this release in 10.0.21, we've got kind of these new features available for you. One of which is adding the support for the warehouse work templates for the goods in transit orders to have a work header break. And the other one is for a new periodic batch job, and that's what you can see a screenshot of on the right, called update tracking for put away. And that's so that you can accurately record the date of arrival for your imported goods on your voyages. So some details here about each for the work breaks. Again, that's just adding the ability to split the transactions for those goods in transit order receiving process. So if you're familiar with working with warehouse management and the setup of work templates, you're probably familiar with those work header breaks already. So this is just adding that same functionality to your goods in transit orders for landed cost. And then for tracking the updates, this periodic job, this feature works by automatically updating the actual completion date for each activity tracking record to match the date at which the goods were put away at your warehouse. So this, as I said, is a periodic task. It's meant to be run nightly as a, or as a daily recurring batch job. And so what it does is identify which landed cost voyages have received all inventory transactions and which voyages don't have a value set for the actual end date. And then it goes through and it sets the actual end date to the current date. So it's assuming that, that current date, if all the inventory transactions are complete, then it's essentially setting that end date as the current date. Okay, so that's just tying out our tracking transactions for our voyages. And then we've got some enhancements for the rebate management module as well. And similar to landed cost, the feature we just talked about, this is not actually behind feature management. So if you've got the rebate management module enabled and you're working with it, you'll see some updates starting with this 10.0.21 release. So there are enhancements for the support of a more streamlined rebate process through a central rebate workbench. As well as being able to define rebate conditions based on catch weight units for catch weight items. So some of the other specific features that are included here for rebate management now are the centralized rebate workbench, a new procurement category, a rebate management details for sales and purchase order lines, a enhancement to the deduction workbench, and then as well as being able to specify unit type of either inventory unit or that catch weight unit for each rebate deal. And then finally, we've got the soft reservation feature for inventory visibility. So if you are using the inventory visibility microservice to get kind of a single view of your inventory, if you're working with a third-party system, a 3PL, an e-commerce front end, whatever it is, then there's a new feature here that is behind feature management. So you'll want to enable this inventory visibility integration with reservation offset to use this new soft reservation feature. What it does is add in the inventory management and inventory visibility integration parameters form a new tab for the reservation offset. So you enable the feature and then you would want to come into this new tab in the form and enable the reservation offset. So just enabling the feature will not enable it. This is off by default. So enable the reservation offset, and then you can choose if the offset modifier is reserved inventory or on order inventory. What's happening with this soft reservation feature is that as I said, order management and point of sale systems can communicate directly with your Dynamics 365 supply chain management environment to find and temporarily reserve the requested inventory amount. So that helps ensure that you can actually deliver the inventory as promised. What you don't want to do is have a front-end system where you're committing orders based on, an inventory that you think you have available in Dynamics. When there is no reservation being placed, then that on-hand available isn't being deducted, and you could potentially overcommit based on your inventory position. So this temporary booking, we're calling it a soft reservation. So, it calculates the Dynamics 365 available physical inventory, places a soft reservation, deducting the amount essentially requested by the order. And then it deducts the reserve quantity. And so the next time an subsequent order is placed and the inventory position is called from inventory visibility, it's going to calculate, right? I have this amount in Dynamics. I've already placed X amount of soft reservation. So this is what I should technically have available. That way I'm not overcommitting. So then how this ties out with this reservation offset feature enabled is that when the formal order, like the sales order, is sent in from the front end system to Dynamics for processing, then it converts that soft reservation into a reserved physical status so that it can be fulfilled. And then the next time the inventory visibility service calls for the inventory position from Dynamics, it's no longer that calculation of, on hand minus soft reservation. Well, it's technically the same calculation, but now the soft reservation has been actually offset in Dynamics. So that amount is reduced and the soft reservation is technically 0 now. So that's your new starting position for further orders. So this is designed as an API, as we've been talking, that external systems can access to learn whether their inventory is available and make sure we invoke the soft reservation so that we're placing a hold and we're not overcommitting. Okay, so if you work with the inventory visibility microservice, if you work with it as part of the intelligent order management platform, then this new feature is one I know that we've been waiting for in this microservice for a while. All right, and that is all of our inventory and logistics features that we wanted to highlight for Wave 2. So Zach, is there any Q&A from the chat that I can answer?
We had one come up that I didn't know how to answer. In terms of those mobile instructions that, that pop up and the fact that a user could dismiss that, what if that user or they wanted to bring those back? Is there any way in the app to sort of undo that? Does that make sense?
Yes, there is. And I haven't tested it, to be honest, but I think this parameter is passed in the XML between the app and Dynamics 365. So my initial thought is probably that, okay, so let's see, it doesn't pop up again there. If I did want it to pop up again, let me see if just clearing quickly in a test here, if clearing my work user session is actually going to let me see that again. So let me go ahead and end my session. That's going to kind of hard close, kick me out of my app session. And let me go back to the app. Let's see what happens. This would be my only thought. So if I click on something here, it should kind of kick me out. Okay, so I have to re-log in. Let's access that same menu item for the pop-up that I dismissed. Okay, it did not. That would be something I would have to look into further. I don't think that the parameter value is like logged in the UI anywhere. but we can certainly look into that.
Yeah, we'll follow up on that.
Yeah.
So. I don't see any other questions right now. So.
Okay. All right, great. Well, let me go back to the slide deck here. As always, if there's additional questions you think of afterwards or would just like to connect, feel free to contact me, connect with me on LinkedIn. And as we said in the Wave 1 presentation, our intent is to do these sessions on the, what's new in supply chain management kind of, shortly after each new major release each year. So you can expect to see another session from us in the, April, May timeframe in 2022. So I will kick it back over to Brad to close us out.
Thanks, Nicole. To all our attendees out there, I've posted a link to a short survey in the Q&A panel. We'd love your feedback on today's session and to hear what you'd like to see in future events. Thank you for your participation. As a reminder, the recording of today's session will be available on the Tech Talks Community Dynamics page within 5 business days. And finally, I'd like to extend a big thank you to our presenters and audience for joining us today.